Just over 1 year ago today, first responders were called to a group home and found one resident washing away blood in the shower. Now, a new podcast investigating the murder case is also exposing holes in the justice and mental health systems along the way. Take a look.
At one time, things seemed pretty good for Stephen Howells.
The thing that I always remember is his smile.
But life would become more challenging for Howells after he started experiencing delusions. He ended up living in a group home just outside of Phoenix, Arizona. But Stephen Howells would never get the chance to leave. On April 12, 2021, first responders were called to that home on a quiet street in Gilbert, Arizona, where they'd find another resident, Christopher Lambeth, washing away blood in the shower.
I worried about things like that happening, but I worried about it on the street, not in someplace that's supposed to keep them safe.
It's not clear why Stephen Howells was living at Tilda Manor, but records show his accused killer, Christopher Lambeth, had been living there since at least 2018.
Back when he was a teenager, we learned through court documents that he, had been diagnosed with some mental health issues and had been receiving treatment, but ultimately went to live with his grandparents in a community outside of Tucson. And at some point during that time, he killed both of his grandparents. He brutally stabbed them to death. A neighbor or a friend of the family ultimately, called police to the house for a welfare check, and they found him, in his grandparents' house, just watching TV, their bodies down the hall.
Wow. So here to talk about the case, please welcome KPNX reporter and Locked Inside host Erica Stapleton. Thank you, Erica.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, Erica, let's get right into it, because how did a convicted killer end up living in this otherwise quaint neighborhood?
Well, that's a question that a lot of people had when this first came out, and we uncovered that this man who's accused of murder back in April of last year had a past double murder conviction already. So here in Arizona, that suspect actually pleaded guilty except insane to that earlier crime. And in Arizona, if a person pleads guilty except insane, they typically will go to Arizona State Hospital for treatment, not prison. So that's where he went, and he was under the purview of this state board that ultimately can make decisions about whether people could be released before their sentences are up, whether they're monitored in the community, or have more privileges on hospital grounds. So that's what happened with suspect Christopher Lambeth in this case, is that he was allowed to go live in the community several years before his sentence was even up.
So at what point did the system break down for him? Was it like way before that happened, before he was sent?
Well, I think in our reporting, we've uncovered that there were a lot of areas along the way that could have been remedied in different ways, or maybe could have had more careful attention that could have ultimately prevented what happened. And in this case, I think the ultimate failure was when the victim of this group home killing, Stephen Howells, died in the group home. These are state licensed group homes here in Arizona, and unfortunately, he wasn't kept safe in that environment. And these are homes that are supposed to be helping people with treatment and making sure they're, taking steps forward in their life, not ultimately ending them.
Right.
Well, you lead me to my question for you. In making Locked Inside, what did you learn about the holes in our mental health system? Because clearly that's all we've been talking about so far.
Yeah, and that's, essentially the whole story that we continue to uncover. And it seemed that, there wasn't just one problem. We found questions along the way in a lot of different areas. As I mentioned, this is a state licensed group home, and there were questions about the inspections that were done at this facility, and also about the quality of care that was being provided. And then you go back to that state board that ultimately released the suspect in this new case, Christopher Lambeth, to live in the community. There's criticism about that board as well. So there are just a lot of questions and red flags along the way that, as we continued our reporting, we uncovered there maybe could have been some changes or differences. Things could have gone very differently, and should have.
Right. And Erica, thank you for bringing this story to light. Hopefully somehow changes can come from this. That's the goal, right? You can listen to Locked Inside, her podcast covering the case, or on any podcast streamer. We thank you for joining us today. We'll be right back.
Thank you.